plants can't take it up, it rushes
Runs
off
off
into the storm drains and ends up in the river. Fertilizer is one of the problems. I do want to also just mention to folks out there that we also, wastewater is a big problem, and that's from our utilities such as JEA and commercial sources of wastewater as well, such as Georgia Pacific. Georgia Pacific in Palatka is the largest commercial contributor of nutrients to the river. Also failing septic tanks, so that's another thing, is to maintain your septic tank properly if you have a septic tank. And then also sometimes we just have broken sewer pipes that we're not even sometimes aware of that are leaking raw sewage that can contribute as well. So there's a variety of sources, but the bottom line is it's us. That's the problem. You know, whether it be our utility that represents us, such as JEA, or our own individual yards. And so we just all are, we're encouraging everyone, take personal responsibility. There's things we can do that are fairly simple and are not that expensive to do, and just try to do the right thing. That's what we're asking people.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Jimmy, the last big algae bloom we had was 5 years ago, but what I think people forget, we've really had algae blooms in the 5 years since then. Last year, I think we talked during the summer months on our show, there were some people on the west side of the river that had terrible algae blooms. And so this idea that these are kind of, you know, flash in the pans, or not, they don't happen that often. I can sit here today and tell people there are algae blooms in the St. Johns River every summer now. What I think is slightly different, or not even slightly, what is much different this year was the fish kill. But frankly, some of the areas we saw in those photos, it's like the little town of Walaka. People may know it's a small community. It's south of Palatka, north of Lake George. We have members and boat patrol members down there who literally have had algae blooms almost year-round there now. It's a little warmer, and the only, you know, there was a, had it not been for that real cold snap we had, I think Walaka, which is a very important town, a lot of people in Jacksonville have river houses there, we have algae blooms almost year-round. That has both economic impacts and it has psychologically. You know, if you love the river and you see the river's not healthy, it just, it affects you.
Well, you know, Neil, I know a lot of times we'll have people join us in the middle of the show. Why don't we show some of those algae bloom photos again? Because I think it is striking when you see this. Right now, if you live in the Jacksonville area, north of the Buckman Bridge, you may have not have seen a lot of algae blooms right now. A lot of these are south of the Buckman, but what we expect is probably we'll start seeing those north of the Buckman Bridge in Jacksonville. A couple of these photos that we'll see are actually from last year.
In Jacksonville.
One of them is Christopher Creek that's coming up soon. It's a little creek that runs next to Epping Forest off of San Jose Boulevard. And then we have another photo that we'll see soon too of an aerial photo of Bowles School. And so you can see how bad it really was last year.
Yeah,
that's Christopher Creek.
Yeah, that's right on San Jose. People, that was right on San Jose Boulevard, and that's the Bowles School, which everybody knows where that is.
That's the dock at Bowles School. And I want to touch on something too you said earlier, Neil. I think this idea that you know, we need to think of regulations in some cases, like with the St. John's, and the cost to protect it as an investment in the future.
Yes.
I think what we're realizing with the oil spills now in the Gulf is how important our natural resources really are to us, and what the true value of those resources. And I think this is a time that we really need to make some choices and decide, are we going to invest in our natural resources, which I think is a prudent investment in our future and our quality of life and our economy, or are we going to allow these, like the photos we saw, the status quo to continue? And I think most people would say that's unacceptable. There's going to be a cost with cleaning up the river. We know that. And we just have to, as a community, step up and realize that it's a cost that is, as I mentioned, an investment in our future. You know, you also talked about the cost right now to existing businesses. When we see those blooms happen in the river and fish kills, it has a huge impact on a variety of businesses. One of our board members owns a marina. He was telling us right now his business is just dead. Nobody wants to get out on the water and boat, and then they don't want to take the time to maintain their boats. Fishing guides, eco tour guides.
Yes.
The boat, the fishing industry, and all of the
Right.
the merchandise that people that purchase as a part of
Right.
that industry. On and on. I also
think you begin to realize. You know, a lot of people don't realize. I guarantee you, everybody out there knows somebody whose business depends on the river. You may not know it immediately, but if you kind of think about it, you may know somebody that works at a seafood shop, has a marina, sells tackle, is a fishing guide. There's so many connections here.
Well, and also the real estate industry.
Right.
Right now
We've been hearing, as I talked to a woman last week who was down in Orangedale, where a lot of those photos were taken showing a house. She called me and like, when is this going to end? And I told her, I don't have the answer, but I can tell you, we all know some of those real estate values are very high along the river. Someone's looking at a very big house with a high price tag, and they walk out and see that. Is that really conducive to them thinking this is our dream home? We were out yesterday, Jimmy. We saw one group of people fishing, and we saw them at Black Creek. We were pulled in there to get some fuel, and they basically said the fishing has been terrible. And frankly, they were fishing in an area near Fleming Island that there were terrible blooms, and they said, you know what? It was not a very pleasant experience, that one of the guys had taken off work. So, you begin to realize there's an intricate food web, if you will, of people and industries that depend on this river. And frankly, we're going to take a hit. There are going to be people's businesses in addition to what is already happening. So I'll end with this. We're going to learn in this state this year, this summer, what clean water is worth. You take what's happening in the Gulf, what's happening in the St. Johns River. Finally, I think we're going to break through, and people are going to realize without clean water, we don't have a whole lot in Florida.
Well, I'm going to take one more chance just to let people know out there what you can do to help. One, as we mentioned before, I hope you'll get involved with Riverkeeper, but if you don't get involved through Riverkeeper, if that's not your avenue, get involved in some way, especially with the decisions that are being made that affect the future of the St. Johns. We hope that you'll use, as I mentioned earlier, use your voice and your vote. Our elected officials need to hear from us. They need to know that we care about the river, and we also need to elect people that care about the river and are going to do the right thing for the St. Johns. Take personal responsibility. There's a lot of things that we all can do to help the river, such as in our yards and how we maintain our yards. We talked about that earlier. On our website, we have a lot of information about our River Friendly Yards program, about how to fertilize properly, irrigate, try to use as little water and irrigation as we can. There's a lot of real practical tips on how you can do that. You can still have a decent looking yard and be able to reduce the amount of water and fertilizer you use dramatically. Products that we buy, we just have to, I think, be more conscious about the impacts of the choices we make is one of the things that we can do. And just get out and explore and enjoy the river. I think that's another thing too, Neil, that I always encourage people to do. Right now might not be the best time with the algae
probably
blooms,
not the best time.
but there's still places to go.
Sure.
Like for instance, this weekend we have Kayak Amelia, which is a kayak outfitter. They're doing a kayak trip for us. That's a benefit for St. John's Riverkeeper, and they're doing another one in July. And those are ways to get out on the water, get to know the St. John's River. I always say that because when you develop a relationship with it, I think then you'll see why it's so important to protect this incredible resource. So I encourage you to get out and enjoy it, because we really are. Even though the river's not in good health right now, we are blessed to have this incredible resource. Mm-hmm. And what I guess our final message is let's just not, let's take care of what we have. It's not hopeless. Right. It's not a lost cause. We've got a lot to lose. So let's get involved and protect this river and make sure that we have a beautiful St. John's for future generations. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month. St. John's Riverkeeper Show.
And our mission is to help protect the river.